On Top of Spaghetti, written and illustrated by Paul Brett Johnson, with lyrics by Tom Glazer. Howdy, folks. Welcome to Yodeler Jones's Spaghetti Emporium and Musicale. You're just in time to hear about the big sneeze. It all started when they put in that fried fritter fricassee parlor next door. I couldn't haul in a customer with a line and a pole. Yodeler, I said to myself, it's time to upgrade the menu. So I set out to invent the most delicious meatball this side of Sicily, and I likely did, but the blasted thing didn't stick around long enough for a taste test. On top of spaghetti, all covered with cheese, I lost my poor meatball when somebody sneezed. It rolled off the table and onto the floor. And then my poor meatball rolled out of the door. For all I knew, my entire future depended on that runaway meatball. I had to have a bite. So there goes the meatball. I was hot on the trail when it flew to the Piggly Wiggly and hit dear Miss Jenkins smack dab in the squash. Pardon my meatball, I said. Then I told my tale. On top of spaghetti, all covered with cheese, I lost my poor meatball when somebody sneezed. So there she is, and the meatball smacked her. That wasn't the end of it, though not by a monkey's tail. My meatball went a whooshin' and a whizzin', and this time it landed in front of the sheriff's office. Pardon my meatball, I said. On top of spaghetti, all covered with cheese, I lost my poor meatball when somebody sneezed. Next thing I knew, my meatball zinged all the way to the ballpark. By the time I caught up, some tattawhacker was just about to chomp down. Pardon my meatball, I said. There's the meatball. On top of spaghetti, all covered with cheese, I lost my poor meatball when somebody squeezed. So there, he caught the piggy, and the piggy has a hot dog and shot the meatball. That meatball shot to the outfield, boomeranged, whizzed by shortstop, flew over the pitcher's mound, and headed directly for home plate. Bad Bubba Jr. was up at bat. So there's Bad Bubba Jr. And there comes the meatball. And he hit it. Talk about your home run. My meatball zoomed through the wild blue yonder. And where do you reckon it landed? So where do you think that meatball went? They're all looking, trying to see where it went. It rolled in the garden and under a bush, and then my poor meatball was nothing but mush. So there it is. Went all the way from the ballpark. Yodeler, I said, you might as well put up a for sale sign. Then lo and behold, a miracle occurred. So what do you think happened? The mush was as tasty could be. And by the next day, it grew into a tree. The tree was all covered with beautiful moss. It grew great big meatballs and tomato sauce. So now he's got a meatball tree. Know what? Those were the most delicious meatballs this side of Sicily. Nowadays, plenty of folks stop in for a bellyful. I always tell them, though, if you eat spaghetti all covered with cheese, hold on to your meatball and don't ever sneeze. So if you look back here, the fried fritter fricassee is closed now, and everybody's lined up to go to the Spaghetti Emporium and Musicale. So somebody sneezed, the elephant did, and off goes the meatball. And it's going to start all over again. So here's the notes for the song, if you know the words. If you don't know the words, they have them here, and you can sing the song on top of spaghetti. So So today we're gonna make our own plate of spaghetti. So we're gonna start with a paper plate. And the first thing we're gonna do is put the sauce on the bottom. So to do the sauce, I decided to use a bingo dabber. You can use paint or a marker or a crayon or whatever you want. But I just used my bingo dabber and I dabbed a whole bunch of color on there. And then I just was sliding it back and forth to mix all the dabs of color to make my plate. And there's always some spaghetti sauce up on the edges of the plate. So there's the bottom of my spaghetti sauce on my plate of spaghetti. So then the next thing I need is my spaghetti. And for that, I'm going to use a pile of yellow or white yarn. So I'm going to add some tacky glue onto my plate. Lots of tacky glue everywhere. Just going to spread it around all over so we can add our spaghetti. So that's my tacky glue. And then I'm just going to take my mound of yarn and try to make it look like a mound of spaghetti. So I'm just going to spread it all over my plate. And you can do a big, huge pile or a small pile, whatever you have. And then I'm going to put a little more glue on top where I mound it. And I'm going to add all that on there. So with this craft, you're going to have to wait for your glue to dry before you can lift up your plate of spaghetti like this, so that it's all stuck on there. So there's my spaghetti. And then the other thing I have is my meatballs that are in our book. So I just have some brown yarn. And to make a meatball, I just take the end of my string and I'm wrapping it around 2 fingers a couple times, maybe 5 or 6 times. And you end up with a little ball when you pull your fingers out. And if you squeeze that together and then wrap the string around the other direction a few times, and then pinch the ends of that together and then wrap your string again, eventually you end up with a little ball. And then I'm going to take that little ball and I'm going to put some of my tacky glue on there, quite a bit, and I'm going to stick it on my plate. So then you need to repeat the same thing to make the rest of your meatballs. Just need to find the end of our string, wrap it around your finger, pinch it together, wrap it again, then pinch those ends together, wrap it again, and depending how big you want your meatball, you can trim that off. And I'm going to add some more. And then you can just keep repeating that until you have as much spaghetti and meatballs on your plate as you want. So there is your spaghetti and meatballs for your On Top of Spaghetti song.